Hi. Welcome to Inference. In this video, I will be talking about the Calhoun experiment. The Calhoun experiment, also known as the Mouse Utopia Experiment, was a study conducted by John B. Calhoun in the 1950s and 1960s to examine the effects of overpopulation and social isolation on animal behavior. Calhoun was a researcher at the National Institutes of Health, and was interested in studying the impacts of overpopulation on mental health and behavior. The Calhoun experiment is a classic example of a social experiment that has been studied for decades. It was conducted by John B. Calhoun, an American biologist, in the late 1940s and early 1950s. The experiment was designed to study the effects of overcrowding on the behavior of rats. The results of the experiment have been used to conclude the effects of overcrowding on human behavior. John B. Calhoun was an American biologist who conducted a series of experiments in the late 1940s and early 1950s. He was interested in studying the effects of overcrowding on the behavior of rats. He designed a series of experiments that were conducted in a laboratory setting. The experiments were designed to simulate a rat population in a confined space. The experiments were conducted in a series of 4-foot square cages. The cages were divided into 4 sections, each containing 4 rats. The rats were provided with food and water, but no other amenities. The cages were designed to simulate a rat population in a confined space. The experiment was conducted over several months. During this time, the rats were observed and their behavior was recorded. The results of the experiment showed that the rats exhibited a range of behaviors, including aggression, territoriality, and social withdrawal. The results of the experiment showed that overcrowding had a significant effect on the behavior of the rats. The rats became increasingly aggressive and territorial, and they began to withdraw from social interaction. The results of the experiment suggested that overcrowding can harm the behavior of animals, including humans. Calhoun designed a series of experiments in which mice were placed in a controlled environment with unlimited access to food and water. The mice were observed as their population increased over time. Calhoun noticed that as the population of mice grew, their behavior changed significantly. The mice became more aggressive and territorial, and there were increased instances of social isolation and abnormal sexual behavior. One of the most striking findings of the Calhoun experiment was the emergence of a group of mice that became completely withdrawn and isolated from the rest of the population. These mice, known as beauty queens, stopped reproducing and withdrew from social interaction altogether. Calhoun referred to this phenomenon as social pathology. The Calhoun experiment has had a significant impact on the field of psychology and has been widely cited in discussions about overpopulation and its impact on mental health and social behavior. The experiment has also been used as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overpopulation and the importance of maintaining a healthy balance between population size and resources. Despite its importance, the Calhoun experiment has been criticized for several reasons. One of the main criticisms is that the controlled environment in which the mice were kept did not accurately reflect the real world. Mice in the wild do not have unlimited access to food and water, and they face a variety of challenges that the mice in the Calhoun experiment did not. As a result, some have argued that the findings of the experiment may not apply to real-world situations. Another criticism of the Calhoun experiment is that it has been oversimplified and mischaracterized in popular media. The experiment has often been used as a metaphor for overpopulation and its negative consequences, but this oversimplification ignores the complexity of the experiment and the many variables that may have influenced the results. Despite these criticisms, the Calhoun experiment remains an important and influential study in the field of psychology. It has helped to shed light on the impacts of overpopulation and social isolation on behavior, and it has sparked important conversations about the importance of maintaining a healthy balance between population size and resources. In the first generation of mice in the Calhoun experiment, the population began to grow rapidly as the mice had unlimited access to food and water. The mice were observed to be relatively calm and non-aggressive, and there was little evidence of social isolation or abnormal sexual behavior. However, as the population continued to grow in the second generation, the mice began to exhibit increased aggression and territorial behavior. There were also instances of abnormal sexual behavior, such as male mice attempting to mate with females who were already pregnant or nursing. By the third generation, the population of mice had reached its peak and the mice began to display even more aggressive and territorial behavior. The mice also showed increased instances of social isolation, with some mice withdrawing completely from social interaction. This group of mice, known as beauty queens, were antisocial and were uninterested in mating. As the population of mice declined in the fourth generation, the mice began to exhibit less aggressive and territorial behavior. However, the instances of social isolation and abnormal sexual behavior remained high. In the final generation of mice in the Calhoun experiment, the population had declined significantly and the mice began to exhibit more normal behavior. The instances of aggression and territorial behavior decreased, and there was a decrease in instances of social isolation and abnormal sexual behavior. There is some evidence to suggest that overpopulation may have negative impacts on human mental health and social behavior. For example, studies have shown that crowded living conditions are associated with increased rates of anxiety and depression. In addition, high population densities have been linked to increased instances of aggression and violence. However, it is important to note that the Calhoun experiment has been criticized for its limitations, and how it has been oversimplified in popular media. The controlled environment in which the mice were kept did not accurately reflect the real world, and many variables may have influenced the results of the experiment. As a result, it is difficult to draw direct comparisons between the findings of the Calhoun experiment and the potential impacts of overpopulation on humans. In conclusion, the Calhoun experiment is a classic study that has had a significant impact on our understanding of the impacts of overpopulation and social isolation on behavior. While the experiment has been criticized for its limitations and oversimplification in popular media, it remains an important study that has helped to shape our understanding of these important issues. Further research is needed to understand the potential impacts of overpopulation on human mental health and social behavior, and to identify strategies for mitigating these negative effects. Alright, folks, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new about the Mouse Utopia experiments conducted by John Calhoun. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Goodbye.